I still remember the way the sky looked that morning, gray, heavy, and unforgiving. It felt like the world knew something I didn't. I sat in the passenger seat of my daughter's car, hands folded neatly in my lap, my favorite shawl wrapped tightly around my shoulders. Emily was quiet, too quiet, and that silence between us was louder than any argument we'd ever had. She didn't even turn on the radio like she usually did. She just kept her eyes on the road, her grip on the steering wheel a little too tight. I kept glancing at her, hoping for a smile, a word, anything, but all I got was a sigh, like she was doing something burdensome. "I found a place for you," she had said 2 nights before, just like that. No conversation, no warm discussion over tea, just a statement, cold and firm. I asked her if everything was all right, if I'd done something wrong. She avoided my eyes and said, "You need help now, Mom. I can't do this anymore. I'm overwhelmed. Overwhelmed." That word echoed in my head over and over again. After everything, I was now a burden. I wanted to believe her. I really did. I told myself she must be stressed from work, from life, from raising her own children. I convinced myself this was temporary, just a little help until things settled down. She said the place was nice, peaceful, said I'd have my own room and people to talk to. I smiled weakly and nodded, trying to hide the way my heart cracked inside my chest. But deep down, I knew when we pulled up to the nursing home, my breath caught in my throat. It looked like a hospital pretending to be a hotel, shiny floors, fake plants in the corners, and walls too white to feel like home. I clutched my handbag tighter, suddenly unsure whether I had packed everything I'd need. My fingers brushed against a small photo of Emily as a baby, tucked safely in the side pocket. That picture had been in my purse for decades, back when I used to sing lullabies to her when she'd cling to my leg and beg me not to leave for work. Back when I was her whole world. Now I was just inconvenient. We walked inside together, but it didn't feel like we were together. Her steps were fast, impatient. Mine were slow, cautious. At the front desk, she did all the talking, signed the papers, nodded at things I didn't understand. A nurse came over and introduced herself with a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. I forced a smile back. It was all happening so fast. "Your room is ready, Mrs. Patel," the nurse said gently, gesturing toward the hallway. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but my words caught in my throat. I turned to Emily. "Can we talk for a minute?" I asked. She looked uncomfortable, as if I'd asked her to relive some trauma. "Mom, everything's set up. You'll be fine here. I've got a meeting in an hour." "A meeting?" "Of course. Just call me if you need anything," she added, giving me a quick hug. Her perfume was the same, floral and crisp, but the warmth I used to feel when she embraced me wasn't there anymore. She pulled away before I was ready, and then she was gone. I stood there watching the glass doors close behind her, my reflection staring back at me, a woman I barely recognized, tired eyes, thinning hair, a trembling lip. I wasn't crying yet, but the tears were coming. I could feel them waiting behind my eyes like a dam about to burst. The nurse placed a gentle hand on my back and led me to my new room. It was small, tidy, impersonal, a single bed, a dresser, a window that faced a brick wall. I sat down slowly, hands in my lap again, and stared at the door, half expecting Emily to burst back in saying, "I'm sorry, Mom. I made a mistake. Let's go home." But the door stayed shut. That was the moment it hit me. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't about help. This was about being put away, set aside, forgotten. I looked around the room again. The silence almost mocked me. My suitcase sat at the edge of the bed, unopened. I couldn't bring myself to unpack. I felt like a guest in someone else's nightmare. Later that night, after the nurse brought me dinner on a tray and left with a polite smile, I finally let the tears fall, not loud sobs, just quiet, steady streams down my cheeks. I wasn't just mourning my home or my independence. I was mourning the loss of a relationship I had cherished more than anything in this world. Emily, My daughter, the child I raised with every ounce of love I had. The child I protected from storms and heartbreak had now left me here like I was too much, like I was too old to matter. And still, even in that moment, I loved her. That was the beginning of the end, or so I thought. They say motherhood is a blessing, and it is, but no one tells you how much it takes from you, how it stretches you thin, breaks you down, and rebuilds you over and over again, all in silence. I was only 24 when Emily was born. Her father, Raksh, left when she was just 4. One morning, he kissed her on the forehead, told me he was going to get milk, and never came back. No phone call, no note, just vanished. I waited days, then weeks, clinging to the hope that he would return, but deep down I knew. And just like that, I became both mother and father. I still remember the night she had a high fever. I was holding her in my arms, her tiny body burning up, and I had no car, no money, no one to call. I wrapped her in a blanket, held her close to my chest, and ran 3 blocks to the nearest clinic barefoot. My feet bled, but I didn't care. The only thing that mattered was getting her help. That's what being a mother is. You forget your pain, you forget your needs, you just give. I started working 2 jobs, one at a bakery in the mornings and another cleaning offices at night. I barely slept. My back ached constantly, my hands cracked from washing too many dishes in hot water. But when I came home to Emily's smile, it was all worth it. I skipped meals more times than I can count so she could have a full plate. She loved mangoes, and even when they were expensive, I'd buy one and pretend I didn't want any. "You eat it, Beta," I'd say. "Mama's not hungry today." There was a time we couldn't even afford a heater in winter. I remember curling up with her under 3 blankets, my arms wrapped around her so tightly, whispering stories to distract her from the cold. She thought we were just playing. She didn't know we were surviving. When she turned 16, she got invited to prom. She came home that day, her eyes shining with excitement. "Mama, I want to go," she said softly. I smiled and nodded, even though my heart sank. We didn't have money for a dress, barely enough for rent that month. That night, after she fell asleep, I opened my old jewelry box. Inside was the last piece of my old life, my wedding ring, a simple gold band with a tiny diamond. It was the only thing Rakesh had left behind. I stared at it for a long time before slipping it into my pocket. The next morning, I sold it, and with that money, I bought her a dress, a beautiful maroon gown that shimmered in the light. When I gave it to her, she cried. "Mama, how did you?" she asked. I just smiled and said, "A mother always finds a way." She never knew the truth. Every report card, every award she won, every time she came home excited about a school play or a science fair, I clapped the loudest. I was always there, even when it meant missing work or skipping meals, because her joy was my joy. I didn't just raise a child, I raised a dream. I believed Emily would grow up to be kind, strong, and full of love. I thought all the sacrifices would come back one day, not in money or gifts, but in warmth, in care, in the way she would hold my hand when I'd grow old. But I was wrong. The same hands that once reached out to me in the dark, calling me mama with sleepy eyes, those hands would one day push me away into a room that wasn't mine, into a place that felt more like a storage space than a home. People say karma always finds its way. Maybe, but before that, I want people to know who I was, not just an old woman in a nursing home. I was a mother, and I gave everything I had for Emily. It's strange how when you look back, the truth starts to glow like neon signs in the dark, bright, obvious, almost embarrassing. You wonder how you missed it all, how you chose not to see. With Emily, I missed so many signs. I remember the first time she rolled her eyes at me. It was small, almost playful. I was telling her to carry a scarf. It was chilly outside, and I said, "You'll catch a cold, Beta." She rolled her eyes and laughed. "Mama, I'm not a kid anymore." I laughed too. I thought it was just a daughter being cheeky with her mother. But it happened more and more after that. Little sighs, impatient glances, her fingers tapping the table while I told a story, as if she had somewhere better to be. Sometimes I'd be talking, and she'd just pick up her phone in the middle of my sentence, nodding distractedly while scrolling. "I'm listening," she'd say, but I knew she wasn't. I told myself it was just stress. She had work, 2 kids, a house to run. Life isn't easy. I convinced myself that her shortness, her silences, her lack of warmth were all just temporary. But they weren't. I remember calling her one evening just to talk. I hadn't spoken to her in days, and I missed her voice. The phone rang 4 times before she answered with a clipped, "Yeah." I hesitated, unsure. "It's me," I said. "I just wanted to hear your voice." There was a pause, then she said, "Mama, I'm in the middle of something. Can I call you back?" She never did. At first, I tried to justify everything. She's busy, she's tired, she's doing her best. But deep down, a quiet ache had started to grow, the kind of ache that comes when love begins to feel one-sided. She only called me when she needed something. "Mama, can you watch the kids this weekend? Do you still have those old dishes? Do you have any savings bonds in my name?" "Never. How are you?" "Never. Do you need anything?" "Never. I miss you." I remember one winter, I fell and twisted my ankle while trying to shovel snow from the driveway. I called Emily, just needing to hear a caring voice. She picked up and said, "Mama, I told you not to do these things. I don't have time to deal with this right now. Can you ask the neighbors?" That stung, not just her words, but the tone, the finality in it, like my pain was an inconvenience, like I was a problem to solve, not a person to love. Still, I ignored it. I kept loving her harder. I cooked her favorite meals when she visited, even though she barely touched them. I knitted sweaters for the grandkids, even though she said they don't really wear handmade stuff. I gave her money when she needed it, even when it meant I had to go without something myself, because that's what mothers do, right? We give, we forgive, we wait for the warmth to return. But the warmth never came back. Sometimes she would speak to me in that flat, emotionless tone, the kind that makes your skin feel cold even in a heated room. She stopped calling me Mama and started saying Mom, like it was a formality. I clung to the past like an old photograph. I kept remembering the little girl who would run into my arms after school, who'd cry into my lap after a bad dream, who once said, "When I grow up, I'll take care of you the way you take care of me." What happened to that Emily? The truth is, I saw it coming. The signs were all there. I just didn't want to believe that the daughter I poured my soul into could ever become someone who'd treat me like a burden, like an afterthought. So I stayed silent. And now, when I sit in this room, far away from my home, my things, my memories, I realized she didn't change overnight. She drifted bit by bit, and I let her because I loved her, because I thought love was enough. But sometimes love isn't a cure. Sometimes it just blinds you to the truth that's been right in front of you all along. I was making tea that afternoon, the kind Emily used to love as a child, cardamom, a hint of ginger, just the way she liked it. I had even made her favorite almond biscuits in case she brought the kids. I was excited, nervous even. It had been weeks since she last visited when I heard her car pull into the driveway. I looked at the clock, 2:47 p.m. Early for a casual visit. I wiped my hands on my apron and hurried to open the door. She didn't smile. Her face was tight, serious. She stepped inside like she didn't recognize the house anymore. She didn't even take her shoes off, just looked around like she was inspecting something. "Emily, is everything all right?" I asked. She walked past me straight to the living room, her heels clicking against the wooden floor. "Mom, we need to talk," she said, standing stiff like a stranger. Something about her tone made my stomach twist. She didn't sit. She just stood there, arms folded like a lawyer delivering bad news. "I've been speaking to a doctor," she began. "He says you're not safe living alone anymore. It's time we looked into assisted living." I blinked, confused. "Doctor? What doctor? I haven't seen anyone." "He's a consultant. I've told him about your condition, how forgetful you've been lately, the fall you had last winter, the kitchen accident. But Emily, that was months ago, and I've been fine since then. I don't need. You almost burned the kitchen, Mom, she cut in. You left the stove on. You forgot your medicine. It's not safe anymore. I felt my breath catch in my chest. Why didn't you talk to me first? Let me see this doctor. Let me. There's nothing to discuss. This is for your own good. Her words didn't feel like love. They felt like a verdict. Before I could even process what she was saying, she pulled a manila folder out of her bag and placed it on the coffee table. These are the papers for the house, she said. I've already spoken to a realtor. It'll be sold by the end of the week. The tea was still on the stove. The biscuits were on a plate, untouched. I stood frozen, staring at her, trying to understand. Sold? I whispered. You're selling my house? Our house, she corrected. Technically, I'm co-owner. You added my name after Dad left, remember? For emergencies. Yes, I remembered. I remembered thinking I was being practical, that I was protecting her future, but I never imagined she'd use it like this. I haven't even packed, I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. I'll handle it, she replied. The movers will come on Thursday. You'll be at the facility by then. Facility? Like I was being sent away, exiled, discarded. I looked around my living room at the faded photos on the wall, the rug Emily used to crawl on, the dining table where we celebrated birthdays and cried over losses. My life was here, my memories, my story, and now she was erasing it. I want to pack my own things, I said, swallowing the lump in my throat. She shook her head. It'll be easier if you don't. You'll only get overwhelmed. I stared at my daughter, this woman I had raised with lullabies and late-night prayers, and I didn't recognize her. Her eyes were cold, detached, like she had made peace with something long before she arrived. She stayed only 20 more minutes, said she had errands to run, hugged me stiffly, her arms like two planks of wood, and told me she'd see me soon. When the door closed behind her, I stood in the silence, the tea now cold on the stove, the biscuits untouched. Something inside me cracked that day, not because she was sending me away, but because she had already let go of me long before I even realized it. That was the day everything changed, and I knew nothing would ever be the same again. They called it Maple Grove Assisted Living, but there was nothing warm or comforting about it. No grove, no maples, just cold beige walls, artificial smiles, and the faint smell of antiseptic hanging in the air like sadness. I remember stepping inside for the first time, clutching a small bag Emily had packed for me without asking what I wanted to bring. No photo frames, no books, no mementos from the home I had lived in for 40 years, just a toothbrush, 2 sets of clothes, and a folded sweater. I didn't even recognize the nurse at the front desk. Welcome, Mrs. Sharma, she said too cheerfully. We're so happy to have you. I nodded politely, but inside I was screaming, you're not happy to have me. You're paid to tolerate me. Emily didn't stay long. She walked me to the room, looked around with mild disinterest, then glanced at her watch. They'll take good care of you, she said. Already halfway out the door, no hug, no warmth, just a ghost of a daughter walking away from the woman who once held her through fevers and heartbreaks. The room was small, 2 twin beds, 1 tiny window that barely let in light, and a curtain that separated me from the other occupant, an old woman named Lorraine who snored like thunder and didn't speak much. I wasn't sick. I wasn't senile. I was just old. But here they treated me like I was broken, like I didn't matter anymore, like my voice didn't deserve to be heard. Breakfast was at 7 a.m., whether you were hungry or not. They'd wheel in trays of oatmeal and applesauce, place them on the little table, and say, "Eat up," in singing voices. If you didn't finish it, they'd frown like you were being difficult. Privacy, that word didn't exist at Maple Grove. Bathroom doors left slightly ajar for safety, nurses walking in without knocking, group activities announced over loudspeakers like we were in a school assembly. I wasn't allowed to go outside without signing a logbook and being escorted like a prisoner on parole. And the silence, oh, the silence. Not peaceful silence, but the kind that wraps around your chest and makes it hard to breathe. The kind that reminds you that no one's coming to visit, that your phone hasn't rung in days, that your daughter hasn't checked in, not even a text. I cried myself to sleep every night for the first 3 weeks, quietly into my pillow so Lorraine wouldn't hear. Sometimes I'd stare at the ceiling, remembering my kitchen window, the way the light would pour in while I made chai. I'd think about my garden, the marigolds and tulips I used to water every morning. I missed the creak of the floorboards in my hallway, the hum of the fridge, even the sound of neighborhood kids shouting outside. But most of all, I missed being seen, being known. Here I was, just room 112B, not a mother, not a woman who once sacrificed everything to raise a daughter alone, not a human being with stories, dreams, and pain, just another old woman to be monitored, bathed, and sedated. Sometimes I'd overhear the staff talking. She's mostly quiet, doesn't cause trouble. The daughter? Yeah, she signed everything over. Probably won't visit much. That hurt more than I care to admit. And Emily? She didn't call, not once. No check-ins, no "how are you, mom?" Not even a birthday card. It's funny how quickly someone can disappear from your life, even if they're still breathing, walking, and living just a few miles away. I wanted to believe she was just busy. I told myself maybe she felt guilty, didn't know how to face me. But deep down, I knew she had already moved on. She had put me here, not because I was a danger to myself, but because I was an inconvenience to her. Maple Grove didn't feel like a home. It felt like a waiting room for the forgotten, and I was one of them. Now, in the beginning, the silence was unbearable. It wasn't the peaceful kind that wraps you in calm. It was the kind that echoed off the walls in my chest, in the spaces where laughter used to live. The kind that made your own breathing sound too loud. I would lie awake in bed at night, listening to Lorraine snoring, the distant beeping of machines down the hallway, and the occasional shuffle of rubber soles passing my door. But slowly, almost without realizing, I began to make peace with it. I started waking up before the nurses came around. There was a tiny window above my bed, and if I angled the curtain just right, I could watch the sky shift from black to gray to pink. The first sliver of light hitting the sterile walls felt like a quiet rebellion, something beautiful in a place that had stolen so much from me. One morning, I met Alma. She wasn't like the others. While most nurses moved through the halls with practiced indifference, Alma always paused, always saw you. She was in her early 40s, with tired eyes but a warm smile that reminded me of the women from my neighborhood years ago, the kind who'd bring you soup when you were sick. "Would you like chai instead of coffee?" she asked one morning, noticing I hadn't touched my breakfast tray. My eyes lit up. "You have chai?" She smiled. "I make my own blend. Want to try?" From that day on, every morning at 7:15, Alma would bring me a small cup of her homemade chai light on sugar, just enough cardamom. It was the first comfort I had tasted since arriving. I started creating a routine, nothing big, nothing special, just small anchors in the ocean of emptiness. Chai at dawn, a few pages from the old paperback novel I'd borrowed from the rec room, feeding breadcrumbs to the sparrows that nested near the garden fence, sitting by the window to watch the sunlight shift across the trees. In that silence, I began to hear myself again, not the mother version of me, not the patient or the burden or the forgotten woman, just me. I found an old notebook in the art room supply closet. It was meant for sketching, but I used it for something else. I started journaling. The first page was shaky. "Dear Emily," I wrote, though I knew she would never read it. It wasn't a letter out of anger. It was a release. I poured into those pages everything I couldn't say to her, the heartbreak, the confusion, the ache of being discarded. But I also wrote about memories, her first birthday cake, her graduation, the way she used to run into my arms after school. It was my way of keeping those moments alive. Even if she had forgotten them, each day, I'd write a little more, sometimes to Emily, sometimes to myself, sometimes just small observations. The sparrow came back today. Alma wore blue today. She hummed a song I knew from childhood. Those pages kept me sane. They gave shape to the silence. One afternoon, while journaling in the garden, Alma sat next to me during her break. "You're always writing," she said, sipping her tea. "Letters?" "Something like that," I smiled. "They're not meant to be sent." She nodded, not crying, just understanding. That's what I liked about Alma. She didn't ask for explanations. She just let you be. And maybe that's what I had been missing all along, not just companionship, but space to feel, to breathe, to exist without judgment or expectation. For the first time in months, I stopped waiting for Emily to call. I stopped watching the door, stopped begging for answers that would never come. Instead, I watched the birds. I wrote my heart out. I let Alma's quiet kindness remind me that even in the coldest places, warmth can find you. The silence hadn't left, but I wasn't afraid of it anymore because somehow, in the stillness, I was starting to find myself again. Time at Maple Grove moved differently. The days blurred into one another, meals, medication, routine. There was no calendar on the wall, but my body knew when Sundays came. Sunday was the day Emily used to visit. At least, she said she would. The first Sunday, I waited by the entrance an hour early, hair brushed, wearing the light blue shawl she had gifted me years ago. I sat on the stiff beige couch near the main doors, pretending to read a magazine, but really, I kept glancing at every car that pulled into the lot. She didn't come. The next Sunday, I waited again, still nothing. When she finally did show up, 3 weeks after I moved in, it was as if she'd walked into a business meeting, not her mother's new life. She wore a blazer, heels clicking sharply on the floor. She gave me a quick side hug, more out of obligation than affection. "Hi, Mom. You look okay," she said, glancing around the room like she was inspecting it. I smiled, trying to hide my excitement. "Would you like some chai?" "The nurse Alma, she makes it really well, just like how you used to love it." Emily didn't even sit down. "No, I can't stay long. Just came to drop off some documents they needed." She waved a thin file in the air, "Insurance stuff." I nodded slowly. "How are the kids?" "They're fine, busy." How is it she checked her watch twice during the 5-minute visit? Didn't ask how I was doing, didn't ask if I was lonely or scared or even sleeping well. She left the same way she arrived, fast, distant, untouched by the room she was leaving behind. "Okay, Mom, I'll come by again soon." But she didn't. 1 week turned into 3, then a month, then 2. At first, I made excuses for her. She's busy with the kids, she's under pressure at work, she's probably finding it hard to adjust too. But eventually, I ran out of excuses. She just didn't want to come. Each time the nurse called out, "Mrs. Sharma, you have a visitor," my heart would leap, then sink when it was someone else, a volunteer, a counselor, someone from administration. Never Emily. Lorraine, my roommate, noticed once, "She hasn't come in a while, has she?" I tried to laugh. "Oh, you know kids these days, always rushing." But it hurt. It hurt in places I didn't even know could ache. I wasn't asking for much, just a warm conversation, a shared memory, a moment where I didn't feel invisible. I started to wonder if she had even kept any of my things, my photo albums, my jewelry, the shawl her father gifted me before he left. Had she tossed it all out, sold it? Did any of it matter to her? I remember sitting by the window one afternoon, watching the shadows stretch across the grass and thinking, how did we get here? How did the little girl who used to beg me to stay with her through the night become this woman who couldn't spend 10 minutes without checking her phone? Was I too strict, too soft? Did I smother her or not give her enough? The silence brought questions, and the questions brought guilt, but no answers. I wrote about it in my journal, page after page, asking myself where I had gone wrong. I wasn't perfect. I had made sacrifices, yes, but I also made mistakes. I worked too much, I missed parent-teacher nights, and sometimes I didn't always have the patience she needed. But I loved her fiercely, fully, without condition. And now all I had was a fading memory of her laugh and a chair that stayed empty on Sundays. I stopped waiting by the door. Eventually, it was easier that way because when you stop hoping, the disappointment doesn't sting as much. I poured my time into small comforts, Alma's chai, writing, watching the sparrows, and I told myself it was enough. But late at night, when the lights were dimmed and the hallway fell into a hush, I still stared at the door, sometimes wishing just once that she would walk through it like she meant to see me, like I wasn't a responsibility, but a mother she still loved. It was an ordinary afternoon, the kind that slips by unnoticed, soft sunlight pouring through the window, the faint clinking of lunch trays being collected, and the quiet hum of the hallway. I was journaling again, halfway through a sentence about the sparrows when a knock came at my door. Not the usual soft knock of Nurse Alma or the hurried rap of a staff member. This one was firm, deliberate. "Come in," I called, expecting perhaps the social worker doing her monthly round. But it wasn't her. A young man stepped inside, late 20s, maybe early 30s, dressed in a crisp gray suit that looked slightly out of place in our muted, worn-down facility. He had kind eyes, a leather briefcase in one hand, and an expression that was both respectful and curious. "Mrs. Sharma?" he asked. "Yes," I sat up, confused. "My name is Ben Carter. I'm with the law firm Whitman and Fields. I handle estate management. I was hoping to speak with you privately." I blinked. "Estate management?" He smiled gently. "Yes, ma'am, if this is a good time." I hesitated, glancing toward the hallway. Sure, there's no one else here." He walked over and took the chair across from me, placing his briefcase carefully on his lap. "I won't take up too much of your time. I just wanted to introduce myself formally. I've been assigned to your case for some time now." I frowned. "My case?" I thought Emily was handling everything, my accounts, the house, all the paperwork. He tilted his head, his smile softening. "She handled the house sale and certain arrangements. Yes, but not everything." "What do you mean?" He opened the briefcase slowly and pulled out a thick folder with my name typed neatly on the tab. "Your late husband, Mr. Romesh Sharma, left a trust in your name years ago, one that only activates upon a certain condition, which has now been met." My heart skipped. "A trust?" I didn't know about any trust. "Romesh?" "We were barely in contact after he left." "Yes, ma'am. It appears he quietly made arrangements, most likely out of guilt or maybe a sense of responsibility. It's not uncommon." I stared at him, unsure how to feel. "But why now? What condition?" Ben paused before answering, choosing his words carefully. "The trust stipulated it would activate if you were declared medically dependent and transferred into a full-time care facility." I sat there, stunned. "So, because I'm here?" He nodded. "Yes, I was notified of your admission, and the activation clause was triggered. That's why I'm here." My hands trembled slightly as I gripped the arm of my chair. "But Emily, she never mentioned any of this." He hesitated, then spoke slowly. "She may not have known the documents were separate from your shared financial assets, and this trust, well, it bypasses next of kin. It's solely in your name." A long silence stretched between us. I thought of all the days I'd sat by that window, wondering if I had anything left, anything that was mine. And now this stranger was telling me that a part of my past had returned, silently watching over me. I cleared my throat. "So what now? What does this mean for me?" Ben gave a reassuring nod. "It means you have options, Mrs. Sharma. Resources, autonomy. I'll walk you through everything in due time, but for now, I just wanted to meet you personally to let you know you're not forgotten in paperwork." Tears welled in my eyes before I could stop them. I wasn't crying because of the money, not really. I was crying because for the first time in a long while, someone had looked me in the eyes and spoken with kindness. Kindness not out of obligation, but out of respect. He noticed, of course, and stood gently. I'll leave my card here. When you're ready, just call. We'll talk more. I nodded, still too choked up to say much. As he walked to the door, he paused. Oh, and Mrs. Sharma. Yes, this trust, it's sizable. You may want to think about who really deserves to manage your future. He didn't say her name. He didn't need to. As the door clicked shut behind him, I sat there in the silence I had come to know so well. Only now it felt different. The quiet no longer pressed down on me, it carried a promise. A shift had begun. And Emily, well, Emily was about to realize she didn't know everything after all. I suppose every mother has a secret. Some are small, like pretending you love your child's awful cooking just to see them smile. Others are heavier, quiet decisions we tuck away in our hearts, unsure whether the truth would heal or destroy. This one was mine. Years ago, Emily must have been in college. I sold a piece of ancestral land back in India. It wasn't worth much at the time, just a dry patch of earth that no one cared about anymore. My cousin wanted to buy it, and I needed money for a surgery I was too proud to ask anyone else to pay for. I never told Emily about the land or the sale, and when the surgery got covered through the hospital's charity program, I suddenly found myself with a decent sum of money and no immediate need to spend it. So I did something I'd never done before. I invested it, not recklessly but carefully, mutual funds, long-term growth. I met a financial advisor through a friend at the temple. He was kind, patient, treated me like I had value even though I walked in wearing old sandals and a borrowed shawl. It started small, but over the years, the investment quietly grew. While Emily got married, had children, changed jobs, I quietly watched the numbers rise. I never touched it, never even checked it obsessively. It was like planting a seed and then simply trusting the soil. One day, after a particularly harsh conversation with Emily, where she snapped at me for forgetting to bring her daughter's birthday gift, I went to that advisor and said, I want to create something permanent. He looked confused. Like a donation? No, I said, a trust for myself, with instructions for after I die. He raised an eyebrow. What kind of instructions? I took a breath. If my daughter ever treats me like a burden, if she ever tries to put me away like I never mattered, she doesn't get a penny. He didn't laugh. He didn't judge. He just nodded and got to work. I remember feeling a strange mix of grief and relief. Grief because no mother should feel the need to protect herself from her own child. Relief because for the first time in my life, I was doing something for me, not for Romesh, not for Emily, not even for the grandchildren I hardly saw anymore, just me. I never told Emily, not because I didn't trust her, but because deep down, maybe I already knew what she was capable of. Even when she smiled, even when she said, I love you, Mom, on the phone while rushing off to her next meeting, there was always something missing, a chill in her voice, a certain calculation in her eyes. So I kept it quiet. The house she sold, that was just the surface. She thought that was everything I had, but it wasn't. The real wealth, the one born from years of sacrifice, heartbreak, and quiet perseverance, was safely hidden away, untouchable until now. Ben's visit stirred something in me, not just the memory of the trust, but the reminder that I hadn't been entirely powerless all these years. Emily may have put me in this nursing home, but I had the power to decide what happened after. And that knowledge, that was freedom. So I sat that evening, staring at the card Ben had left, and I smiled. Not with bitterness, not with vengeance, but with clarity. Emily had made her choices, and now so would I. The days that followed Ben's visit felt different, not lighter, not easier, just different. The weight of the secret I had carried for so long, the silent decisions I had made, suddenly felt real. I wasn't just waiting anymore. I wasn't just sitting in this sterile room, watching the world move without me. Ben had given me something I hadn't had in months, a sense of agency, a sense that I wasn't forgotten, that there was something I could do, something I could hold on to, even after everything had seemed so out of my control. He had promised me that the trust was in place, all the documents were finalized, The instructions were clear. I could live my life as long as I wanted to, and when the time came, everything would be handled according to the plan I had set years ago. "You don't have to do anything," Ben had said, his voice calm and assured. "The trust is protected, the investments are solid. You don't have to worry. Just focus on living. We'll take care of the rest." For the first time in a long time, I believed him. I didn't have to feel like a burden anymore. I didn't have to worry that Emily's coldness would somehow become my punishment. I didn't have to live in the shadow of her silence. I had options. I had a future that wasn't dependent on her whims. Ben's kindness gave me something else too, something more precious than money or property. It gave me peace. I didn't have to beg for her attention anymore. I didn't have to beg for her love. There was something deeply empowering in knowing that I had done something for myself, that despite the years of self-sacrifice, despite the days and nights I had spent caring for Emily when she was little, when she was rebellious, when she was confused, it was my time now, my turn to make the rules. Ben's promise was a quiet reminder that there was more to my life than the disappointment Emily had given me, that there was more to me than just being someone's mother or someone's burden. That I had been strong enough to take control of my future, even in my old age. "I'll check in with you soon," Ben had said, handing me his business card one last time. "And if you need anything, anything." I had smiled at him, not the fake smile I had been offering everyone for the past months. No, this was the first real smile I had worn in a long time. It was the smile of someone who felt seen, who felt like their existence mattered. I watched him walk down the hallway, his footsteps fading into the distance, and I felt a strange warmth spread through me. For the first time in months, I didn't feel so small. I didn't feel so invisible. I could live. I had permission to live. And if there was one thing I knew in that moment, it was that Emily's indifference wouldn't be the end of me. In fact, it might just be the beginning of something better. It was my birthday, the first one I had spent in the nursing home. To most people, it probably wouldn't have felt like much of an occasion, just another day in the calendar. But for me, birthdays had always been special. They were a time when I could feel like I mattered, like I was still part of something, even if it was just a momentary illusion. I had woken up that morning with a heaviness in my heart, as I had for many months now. The staff wished me a cheerful happy birthday with their usual robotic smiles, but I saw right through it. It didn't feel the same. The cards they gave me felt like empty gestures. They didn't know me. But then, around noon, I heard footsteps approaching my door, a soft knock. "Come in," I called, already knowing who it was. Emily. She stepped inside, holding a vase of bright yellow flowers in her hands and a folded card tucked under her arm. Her face was more composed than I had expected, not quite the warm embrace of a daughter coming to celebrate, but not entirely cold either. "Happy birthday, Mom," she said, her voice lacking any real warmth but not as dismissive as I had feared. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to believe it. Maybe she did miss me. Maybe she was here because she cared. I smiled weakly, but it didn't reach my eyes. "Thank you, Emily," I whispered, taking the flowers from her hands. They were pretty, though the scent was faint. The card, when I opened it, had a generic message inside, something about love and good health. She didn't sit down. She stood awkwardly beside my chair, as if she wasn't sure what to do with herself. "Are you okay, Mom?" she asked, her eyes scanning me briefly, almost too quickly. She shifted her weight, clearly ready to leave at any moment. "I'm fine," I replied, though my heart felt heavy. "It's good to see you." I hadn't seen her in weeks. The loneliness that had grown in my chest over that time felt like a weight, something I couldn't shake off. I had hoped that today, my birthday, she might show me the love I had been yearning for. Maybe she'd hold my hand and tell me she was sorry for everything. Maybe she'd sit with me just for a while and make me feel like I mattered. But that wasn't what happened. "Did you update your will?" she asked, the words slipping from her lips so casually it felt like a slap. Her eyes didn't even meet mine when she said it, as if it was just another routine question. I blinked, the air in the room suddenly feeling colder. What? I asked, my voice shaking, but not from emotion. No, it was something else, something deep in my gut telling me the truth I had been avoiding. Your will, Mom, she repeated, her tone light, as if she were asking about the weather. I just want to make sure everything's in order, for when, well, when it's time. I felt the room go still. My heart dropped to my stomach. For a moment, I was too stunned to respond. It was like someone had ripped the veil away, showing me the ugly truth I had been too afraid to admit. This was not a daughter who loved me. This wasn't a daughter who missed me. This was a woman who was calculating, a woman who had never seen me as a mother, just as a means to an end. I had raised Emily with everything I had, every sacrifice, every struggle, every tear. I had given her my youth, my energy, my hopes. I had been her protector, her provider, her anchor. But in the end, what had I become to her? A financial responsibility? An obstacle? I took a deep breath and looked up at her, meeting her eyes for the first time that day. I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time, a hardness and emptiness. And in that moment, I knew with terrifying certainty that Emily was only here for one reason. She wasn't here to celebrate my life. She wasn't here to wish me well or remind me how much I meant to her. She was here because she wanted something from me. Emily, my words caught in my throat. I couldn't say it. I couldn't tell her that I knew what she was after, that I had known for a long time. But I didn't need to say anything. The look in my eyes must have said it all. I could see her falter just slightly. Her gaze flickered, then shifted away as she stuffed her hands in her pockets. Well, she said, trying to cover her discomfort with a forced laugh, I'll let you get back to your celebrations. Her voice trailed off, and before I could respond, she turned and walked out of the room. I sat there, staring at the flowers she had left behind. The card was still in my hand, but it no longer held any meaning. The words inside had faded in my mind. It was my birthday, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely and utterly alone. As the door clicked shut behind Emily, I sat there for a long while, staring at the empty space where she had just been. The sounds of the nursing home faded into the background, and everything felt distant, muffled, like I was trapped in a dream that I couldn't wake up from. The birthday flowers sat untouched on the small table beside me. The card she had given me lay crumpled in my hands, but it no longer mattered. It had become just another reminder of how far we had drifted, how much I had given, and how little had been returned. I knew deep down that I wouldn't see her again, not in the way I had once dreamed of. She would never come to visit me the way she used to. She wouldn't bring her children to show me how much. They had grown. She wouldn't call to ask how I was or if I needed anything. No, that part of my life was over. I felt a strange calmness wash over me in the silence that followed. It wasn't relief, it wasn't peace, but it was something. I stood up slowly, the years weighing on me with every movement. I walked over to the small desk by the window and reached for the stack of paper I had kept there. The same paper I had been writing on for months now, the same paper that had borne all my fears, my regrets, and my wishes for a future that seemed more distant every day. But this letter, the one I was about to write, would be different. This wasn't going to be a letter of anger. It wasn't going to be filled with the resentment I had carried for so long. I had spent so much time thinking about how I could make Emily understand, how I could make her feel what I felt. But I realized then that it didn't matter anymore. She had made her choices, and I had made mine. I wasn't angry, though I had every right to be. I wasn't bitter, even though she had taken so much from me. No, this letter was something else. It was the closure I needed. I picked up the pen and slowly began to write. Dear Emily, it's hard for me to find the right words after all that's happened, after everything I've given and everything I've lost. But I'm writing this not because I need you to change, not because I want you to feel guilty. I'm writing this because I need to let go. I've spent so many years thinking about the ways I could have done things differently, the things I could have said to make you understand me better. But what I've come to realize is that I don't need to explain myself anymore, not to you and not to anyone. I gave you everything I had, and if that wasn't enough, there's nothing more I could have done. I wanted to be a part of your life for so long. I wanted to be there when you needed me, to watch you grow and become the person I always hoped you would be. But somewhere along the way, we lost each other, and maybe that's not your fault. Maybe it's mine too. But the truth is, we're different people now, and that's okay. You are who you are, and I am who I am. I've made my peace with it. I don't need you to visit me. I don't need you to bring the grandchildren. I don't need you to feel guilty for what you've done. What I need is for you to live your life, the one you've chosen for yourself, without looking back. And I need to do the same. So this is goodbye, Emily, not because I'm angry or resentful, but because I've realized something important. I can let go. I can live without waiting for you to change. I can live without your approval, and in doing that, I'm finally free. Take care of yourself, my dear. I hope you find the happiness you're looking for. With love, Mom. I set the pen down and looked at the words in front of me. For the first time in a long time, I felt something other than sadness. It was a strange mixture of acceptance and strength. A weight had been lifted, and though the letter was not the final answer to everything that had happened between Emily and me, it was enough. It was my way of finally saying goodbye. That night, I slipped the letter into the envelope and sealed it with my own hands. I didn't know what would happen to it. I didn't know if Emily would ever read it, but that didn't matter anymore. The words were out of me, and I had said everything I needed to say. I went to bed that night feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. The day had come. I knew it would. I had written the will years ago, right after everything had started to feel wrong with Emily. When I first made the decision to invest that piece of family land to set up the trust, I thought I was protecting myself from what I feared most, betrayal. But as the years passed, as I watched her grow colder and more distant, I realized that this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about making sure that when I was gone, no one could take away what little dignity I had left. I had passed away, though in a way, I had already died long before that moment. The woman I had been, the mother I had tried so hard to be, had already slipped away. What remained now was only the shell of a person, someone who had finally made peace with the choices that had been made. But what happened after my passing, that was what really mattered now. I had known Emily's reaction would be one of entitlement. She had always assumed that everything I had worked for, would eventually be hers. She had never given a second thought to how hard I had worked to build the life I gave her or how many pieces of myself I had sacrificed along the way. To her, I was just another asset to be claimed, another thing to check off her list. But she was about to find out just how wrong she had been. The reading of my will took place in the lawyer's office, with a heavy atmosphere hanging in the air. It was a small, cold room filled with people I hadn't seen in years, save for Ben, the lawyer, a stern man with glasses that seemed to magnify the severity of his gaze. He sat across from Emily and me. Emily, as expected, was sitting smugly, her hands folded in front of her as if she were already counting her inheritance. Ben stood beside the lawyer, holding a folder with my final wishes. I could feel the tension in the room, Emily so certain of what was to come, and me so certain that she would be in for a shock. I had prepared myself for this moment. I had prepared myself for everything. The lawyer adjusted his glasses and looked down at the will. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice professional but carrying a weight that was unmistakable, "we are here today to read the will of Eleanor Thompson. First, let me begin with her most significant asset, her house. It has been donated in its entirety to the local women's shelter. The intent, as stated in her will, is to provide a safe space for women in need, just as Eleanor had always hoped to provide for others in her life." Emily's expression faltered for a brief moment, but she quickly recovered, probably thinking it was a mistake, but I knew it wasn't. I had meant it. Every word, every decision was intentional. The house that she thought she was entitled to was now a sanctuary for women who truly needed it. The lawyer continued. As for the investments, he looked at Ben, who nodded and handed over a second document. The funds, as directed, have been transferred into a trust. The beneficiary of this trust is Alma, the nurse who cared for Eleanor in her final years. Eleanor believed that Alma, in her kindness and compassion, deserved a reward far more than anyone else in her life. Emily shifted in her seat. Her eyes narrowed as she tried to process what was happening. She hadn't been mentioned in any of these parts of the will, but she hadn't heard the most important part yet. The lawyer paused, and for a moment, I wondered if I could still feel something from this side. Was it satisfaction? A sense of justice? It didn't matter. I was gone. But I knew I had made the right choice. Finally, the lawyer said, looking directly at Emily, "There is a letter for Emily Thompson and a token sum of $1 as a symbolic gesture." Emily's face turned pale. She looked at the lawyer as if he had just slapped her in the face. Her fingers trembled, and for the first time since I'd seen her, I saw something other than entitlement in her eyes. It was shock. It was disbelief. She opened the envelope, her hands shaking, and read the letter out loud, her voice trembling with each word. "Dear Emily," the letter began. "When you were born, I promised myself I would always give you the best of me. I promised to protect you, to love you, and to help you find your way in life. But somewhere along the way, you stopped seeing me as a person, and instead, I became an obstacle to your desires. This letter isn't filled with anger. It's not meant to hurt you. It's simply the truth. I gave you everything I had, but somewhere you lost your way. The trust one set up, the house, the money, none of it was meant for you. I want you to know that I'm not angry. I just want you to understand that you cannot take what isn't yours. This is my final goodbye. May you find the peace you've been seeking all these years." Emily crumpled the letter in her hand, her face a mask of disbelief. I had seen the look before, the one that said she didn't understand how it had all slipped through her fingers, how after all this time she had misjudged me, misjudged everything. Ben stood there quietly, watching her reaction, but I could tell there was no sympathy in his eyes. He knew exactly what had happened. The world wasn't hers to take anymore. For a moment, the room was silent. Then Emily stood, almost in a daze, and walked out of the office without saying a word to anyone. The day Emily left the lawyer's office, her face ashen, her eyes wide with disbelief, I knew that her world had just shattered. For so many years, I had been her stepping stone, her source of everything she wanted. But now she was faced with a reality that she could no longer control. I wasn't there to see her reaction in person, but in that moment, I could feel a strange sense of peace settle over me. She would never understand. She could never truly grasp the depths of what I had done. But that didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that I had taken back control of my life, my choices, my legacy. I had found my peace, and that was the treasure I had been searching for all along. But there was still one more thing I needed to do, one final gesture that would mark the end of everything that had been broken between us. A letter that, even if Emily never read, would give me the closure I so desperately needed. I had written the letter long before my passing. It wasn't a letter of anger, though I could have written one filled with resentment. No, this letter was different. It was a letter of truth, of love, and most importantly, of forgiveness. I needed Emily to know that despite everything she had done, I had forgiven her. Not because she deserved it, but because I deserved it. I needed to set myself free from the chains of bitterness and regret. The words flowed easily as I sat at the desk in my quiet room. The years of pain and confusion, the nights I had spent wondering where I had gone wrong, all of it seemed to dissipate as I wrote. I wasn't doing this for Emily. I wasn't doing it for anyone else. I was doing it for myself, to finally let go of the past that had haunted me for so long. Dear Emily, I want to start by saying that I love you. I've always loved you from the moment you were born. But love, my dear, does not mean blind acceptance. It doesn't mean turning a blind eye to the ways we hurt each other, and it certainly doesn't mean I should have accepted the distance that grew between us, as if it were nothing. You see, I've spent so many years trying to understand you, trying to be the mother you wanted, trying to give you everything. But somewhere along the way, I lost myself. I became so caught up in giving you what you wanted that I forgot to protect what I needed. And maybe that's my fault, but it's not yours to fix. I'm writing this letter not to hold you accountable, but to set myself free. I have seen the truth now. I've seen how far you were willing to go to get what you thought you deserved. I've seen the coldness in your eyes, the way you turned away when I needed you most, and I've seen how you've always believed that everything I had, everything I worked for, was meant for you. But Emily, let me be clear. The wealth you sought, the house you thought was yours, the investments you assumed would be yours, it was never truly yours. It was mine, and I gave it all away for a reason. I gave it all away to people who saw me, who treated me with the dignity and respect I deserved. People who didn't take me for granted. People who showed me kindness when you couldn't. And yet, despite all of that, I forgive you. Not because you asked for it or because you deserve it. I forgive you because it's the only way I can move forward. It's the only way. I can be at peace with what has happened, and in doing so, I free myself from the pain of holding on to the anger, the betrayal, the disappointment. You may never understand this. You may never read this letter, but I want you to know this. My peace was my real treasure. I didn't need money, I didn't need things. I needed to be seen, to be understood, and to be loved in a way that honored who I truly was. And that, my dear, is the legacy I leave behind. I hope one day you will find your own peace. I hope you learn that the things we accumulate in this life are not what truly matter. It's the love we give and the love we receive that defines us, and I hope with all my heart that you find that in your own way. With all the love I have left, Mom. I sealed the letter knowing it would never reach her in the way I hoped. Emily had always been someone who saw everything through the lens of what she could gain. She had never understood the deeper things, the things that truly made life meaningful. But I didn't write this letter for her. I wrote it for me, to close the chapter, to give myself the peace I had always craved. And as I sat back, the weight of years of silent suffering finally lifted. I didn't need her forgiveness. I didn't need her approval. I had let go, and in doing so, I had found the freedom I had longed for. That was my real treasure. My peace. As I lie here in the quiet, I finally feel the weight of everything I've lived through begin to lift. It's strange, really, how death has this way of giving you the peace you could never find in life. It's like my soul has unraveled all the knots that bound it for so many years. I may be gone from this world, but somehow I feel freer than I ever did when I was alive. I had always feared this moment, feared the unknown of death, but now that I'm here, I find that it's not as terrifying as I once imagined. The pain, the heartache, it's all gone, and I, for the first time, feel at ease. It's hard to describe what it's like to leave this world, to step away from the struggles that once felt like they would never end. But I do know one thing. I left on my own terms, not in the cold, sterile walls of Maple Grove Nursing Home, not as a forgotten woman in the corner of a room, but as someone who finally understood what true peace felt like. Emily may never understand what I did. She may never know how deep the hurt ran, how much I sacrificed for her, and how much I gave up to make sure she had everything she wanted. But that's not for me to carry anymore. She'll have to live with the knowledge of what she lost, of the mother who could have been by her side, who could have been her friend, her confidant, but wasn't because she chose a different path. I wonder if in the quiet moments of her life she'll reflect on what happened. I wonder if somewhere down the road she'll think back and wish she had treated me differently. I hope she does. I hope she realizes what true love means, what it means to give without expecting, what it means to hold on even when it's hard, and what it means to honor someone for who they are, not what they can give. But if she never does, if she never understands, it won't matter to me. I'm free now, free from the guilt, the disappointment, and the weight of a life that was not mine to carry. I can rest knowing I did the best I could. I gave everything I had to Emily, but in the end, I saved the most important thing for myself, my peace. And Emily, she'll have to live with the consequences of her choices. She'll have to live with the fact that the wealth she thought was hers, the love she thought would always be there, was never truly hers to take. That's the bitter truth she'll carry, and one day it will catch up with her. As for me, I am at peace. I leave this world without regret, without fear, and most of all, without the weight of broken promises. I leave with dignity, with wisdom, and with a soul untethered. So I say goodbye now, not with anger, not with sadness, but with the quiet satisfaction that I am finally free from the hurts of the past, free from the expectations of others, and free to be the person I was always meant to be. Rest in peace, not pieces. That's the gift I leave behind.